Chapter 7, Mishnah 8. The Mishnah discusses 5 cases in which someone designated Meiser Rishon from some of his wine barrels, but does not remember from which barrels he designated. The Mishnah teaches how to best separate the Meiser Rishon in order to permit the most barrels. The first case, if someone had 10 rows of 10 barrels of wine each, i.e., he had 100 barrels of wine standing in a square, 10 barrels wide and 10 barrels long, and he said, in the outer row of these 100 barrels, I designated 1 barrel as Meiser Rishon. For wine, I have somewhere else, but it is not known which outer row it was, i.e., he forgot which of the 4 outer rows he has specified. He should take 2 corner barrels that are diagonally across from each other, pour the wine in them into 1 large barrel, and designate it as Meiser Rishon. Since each corner barrel is part of 2 rows, 2 corner barrels that are diagonally across from each other represent all 4 outer rows. Thus, whichever row he is originally designated is now represented by these 2 barrels. The second case, if he said, in half of an outer row of these 100 barrels, I designated 1 barrel as Meiser Rishon for wine I have elsewhere, but it is not known which half of a row it was, i.e., he forgot which of the 8 outer half rows he specified, he should take 4 barrels, 1 from each of the 4 corners, pour the wine in them into 1 larger barrel, and designated it as Meiser Rishon. Since each corner barrel is part of 2 half rows, these 4 barrels represent all 8 half rows. Thus, whichever half row he originally designated is now represented by these 4 barrels. The third case, if he said, in 1 row of these 100 barrels, I designate 1 barrel as Meiser Rishon for wine I have elsewhere, but it is not known which row it was, he should take 1 diagonal row of barrels, pour them into 1 larger barrel, and designate it as Meiser Rishon. Since the diagonal row of barrels contains 1 barrel from each row, whichever row he originally designated is now represented in these 10 barrels. The fourth case, if he said, in 1/2 row of these 100 barrels, I designate 1 barrel as Meiser Rishon for wine I have elsewhere, but it is not known which half row it was, he should take 2 diagonal rows of barrels, pour them into 1 larger container, and designate it as Meiser Rishon. Since 2 diagonal rows of barrels contain 1 barrel from each half row, whichever half row he originally designated is now represented in these 20 barrels. The fifth case, if instead of saying he designated it in 1 of the rows, he said, in 1 of these barrels I designate Meiser Rishon for wine I have elsewhere, but it is not known which of the 100 barrels it was, he should take the amount needed for Trumas Meiser from each of the 100 barrels, pour all of them onto 1 large container, and designate that as Trumas Meiser.